The most dangerous mistake in the galaxy is assuming you already know what fear looks like. The wind screamed across the basalt plains of Keros. 9. Carrying sheets of black dust that rattled against the observation dome like handfuls of gravel thrown by an angry giant. Inside the reinforced structure, Commander Arya Voss stood motionless with her hands clasped behind her back, silver eyes fixed on the storm beyond the glass. Lightning crawled across the horizon in jagged blue veins, illuminating mountain ranges that looked like broken teeth. Most species would have considered this world uninhabitable. Arya called a home. The temperature outside hovered just above freezing, but the air carried enough corrosive particles to strip paint from a shuttle hull within days. Massive predators roamed the valleys below. Earthquakes were common. Electrical storms could swallow entire convoys. Keros 9 had earned its classification honestly. It was a death world, and Arya was proud of every brutal inch of it. The crowd gathered behind her erupted into applause as the final results appeared on a massive holographic display suspended above the arena floor. Once again, her name occupied the top position. Once again, every challenger from every known sector had fallen short. Survival trials, endurance tests, Azan Navigation, extreme environment adaptation. Arya had dominated them all. A younger officer approached carefully. "Commander, the delegates are waiting." Arya turned from the window. Her pale skin reflected the cool white lighting of the dome, and the dark military uniform she wore seemed almost too simple for someone whose reputation stretched across dozens of star systems. "Let them wait another minute," she said calmly. The officer nodded and stepped back. Nobody argued with Arya Voss. Across the galaxy, her people were considered legends. Entire documentaries have been made about corrosion survival training. Schools taught their methods. Militaries studied their resilience. To most civilizations, the word Deathworlder meant one thing. It meant corrosion. It meant Arya. She finally walked toward the conference hall. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Hundreds of representatives filled the chamber beyond. Alien diplomats, scientists, corporate sponsors, military observers. Their conversations faded the moment she entered. The attention barely registered anymore. Arya stepped onto the central platform. "Congratulations, Commander Voss," the host announced. "You have once again demonstrated why corrosions remain the premier survival specialists in known space." More applause followed. Arya offered a polite nod. "Survival is not a talent," she replied. "It is a necessity. Weak species adapt or disappear." The statement earned approving murmurs from much of the audience. Then a voice spoke from the rear rows. "What about humans?" The room shifted. Several heads turned. Arya raised an eyebrow. "Humans." The speaker nodded. "There are reports that Earth has also received a Death World classification." A few scattered laughs echoed through the hall. Arya almost joined them. Earth. Humanity. The newest curiosity occupying galactic headlines. She had seen recordings. Humans looked ordinary, smaller than many warrior species, less physically imposing than corrosions. Fragile, even. Classification paperwork means very little, Arya said. A true death world produces true survivors. More agreement followed. The discussion moved on. Yet somewhere in the back of the room, a screen displayed an image of a blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Arya barely noticed it. She certainly did not realize that less than a week from now, a human named Ethan Carter would walk into her life and quietly dismantle everything she believed about strength, survival, and what it truly meant to come from a death world. Outside, another bolt of lightning split the dark sky above Keros 9. The storm continued. Unaware of it, the most respected Deathworlder in the galaxy had just taken the first step toward discovering she was not alone. The galaxy loves heroes until it has to meet one in person. 3 days after the summit on Keros 9, the orbital transit hub above Vega crossing vibrated with the steady hum of arriving freighters and departing passenger vessels. The station stretched for nearly 2 miles along its central spine, a floating city of steel, glass, and artificial gravity suspended against an ocean of stars. Commander Arya Voss stepped from her shuttle into the crowded concourse and immediately noticed the silence that followed her. Travelers moved aside. Dock workers straightened their posture. Security officers exchanged quick glances. Even here, hundreds of light years from Karos 9, people recognized her. Arya barely acknowledged the attention. She carried a small travel case in one hand and moved through the station with the calm confidence of someone who had spent her entire life overcoming environments designed to break weaker beings. Above her, holographic advertisements flickered across the ceiling. Cargo schedules scrolled along illuminated panels. Automated announcements echoed through the terminal in 6 different languages. It was all familiar, predictable, ordered. Then a loud metallic crash echoed from somewhere ahead. Several travelers stopped and turned. Arya frowned. Another crash followed, accompanied by a muttered voice. Well, that could have gone better. She rounded a corner and found the source immediately. A maintenance lift stood beside an exposed service panel. Tool cases lay scattered across the floor. Several station workers were attempting to lift a heavy power converter back onto the platform. One of them had apparently dropped it. The man responsible was kneeling beside the equipment, inspecting the damage. He looked entirely ordinary. Medium height, broad shoulders, work boots, dark utility coveralls stained with grease. Light brown hair, no military insignia, no visible weapons, no sign of exceptional status. Just another maintenance technician. You dropped a 600-pound converter, one worker complained. I noticed, the man replied. The loud noise was a clue. A few nearby workers laughed. Arya did not understand why. The situation was not amusing. The technician stood and brushed dust from his sleeves. Good news, he said. The converter survived. Bad news, my pride did not. More laughter followed. Arya watched for a moment before continuing down the corridor. Humans. She recognized the species immediately. Recent members of the galactic community. Surprisingly common these days. She had encountered several during official functions. Most seemed informal to the point of recklessness. The maintenance worker never noticed her passing. He was too busy helping reposition the damaged equipment. Arya dismissed him from her thoughts almost instantly. An hour later, she entered the station operations center for a scheduled logistics review. A dozen officials sat around the conference table. Large tactical displays hovered above them, showing shipping lanes, docking assignments, and cargo manifests. Arya took her seat near the front. The meeting proceeded normally until one display suddenly flickered. Then another. Several warning indicators flashed amber. Power fluctuation in Sector 12, an operator announced. Backup systems are responding. Arya watched technicians rush between consoles. A familiar voice spoke from behind her. Try rerouting through Junction 7. The room turned. The maintenance worker from earlier stood in the doorway, holding a data tablet. Grease still stained one sleeve. Junction 7 was decommissioned last year, someone replied. Officially, the humans said. Unofficially, nobody updated the hardware map after the emergency retrofit. Silence followed. Operators exchanged confused looks. One technician entered a command sequence. Seconds later, the warning indicators vanished. The displays stabilized. Power levels returned to normal. That worked, the operator said. The human nodded. Told you. Arya studied him more carefully this time. He did not look like someone who had just solved a station-wide systems problem. He looked like someone deciding whether to eat lunch now or later. Who are you? One administrator asked. Ethan Carter, he answered. Maintenance engineering. The name meant nothing to Arya. Yet as Ethan turned and left the room, several senior technicians exchanged expressions of obvious relief. One even smiled. Arya Nauticid. She noticed because strong people usually inspired fear, admiration, or caution. This human inspired trust. Somehow that seemed stranger. The first warning arrived as a barely noticeable vibration beneath the station floor. Ethan felt it through the soles of his boots while replacing a damaged relay inside a maintenance corridor nearly 3 decks below the operations center. He paused, tightening one last connector, and listened. The air carried a faint metallic hum that had not been there 5 minutes earlier. Around him, diagnostic lights flickered once, then twice. That was enough to make him uncomfortable. He pulled out a handheld scanner and frowned at the readings. Energy fluctuations were spreading through multiple sectors simultaneously. That was not normal. Above him, thousands of travelers continued moving through the station, unaware that several critical systems were beginning to disagree with each other. Ethan tapped his communicator. "Maintenance control, this is Carter. Are you seeing these power spikes?" Static answered first, then a strained voice. "We are seeing all of them." Ethan immediately stood. "That does not sound encouraging." "It is not." The channel went silent. Across the station, Commander Arya Voss was reviewing cargo security reports when every display in the room abruptly dimmed. Emergency lighting activated a second later, bathing the conference chamber in soft amber light. Several administrators exchanged nervous looks. Arya remained calm. "Status?" she asked. A technician worked rapidly across a console. "We are experiencing cascading failures throughout the central grid." Another alarm sounded. Then another. The room suddenly felt smaller. Arya rose from her chair. "Cause? Unknown." She disliked that answer immediately. Unknown problems usually became expensive problems. Elsewhere, Ethan was already moving through maintenance access tunnels at a brisk pace. The station map projected from his tablet showed a growing cluster of system conflicts near the primary reactor distribution network. That should have been impossible. Multiple safeguards existed specifically to prevent this kind of chain reaction. Yet the indicators kept spreading. He turned a corner and nearly collided with a security team rushing in the opposite direction. "Sector 9 just went offline," one officer shouted. Ethan accelerated. Something bigger was happening. The next vibration hit harder. Overhead lights flickered. Several maintenance drones froze in place before rebooting seconds later. Then the station's public announcement system activated. "Attention! Temporary systems instability has been detected. Please remain calm." Ethan sighed. Whenever a computer said remain calm, it usually meant nobody was calm. In the operations center, new data streamed across emergency displays. Arya studied the information carefully. A station supervisor approached. "Commander, evacuation procedures may become necessary." "May?" Arya asked. "You are uncertain?" Before the supervisor could answer, another officer entered the room carrying a tablet. "We found the source." Every eye turned toward him. A cargo vessel arrived 6 hours ago carrying experimental quantum processors. One of the containers was damaged during transit. The processors began interacting with station infrastructure after docking. Silence followed. "How severe?" Arya asked. The officer hesitated. "Potentially station-wide." That answer changed everything. For the first time that day, concern crossed Arya's face. Meanwhile, Ethan reached the engineering junction nearest the affected cargo docks. The corridor beyond was crowded with technicians attempting to isolate failing systems. He spotted a familiar station administrator and walked over. "Tell me nobody approved experimental processors without running full compatibility checks." The administrator looked exhausted. "This is not helping, Ethan." "That means somebody did." Another alarm echoed through the deck. Ethan stared at the data feed scrolling across a nearby monitor. Then he saw it, a pattern hidden beneath the chaos. His eyes narrowed. "That is not random." The administrator blinked. "What?" Ethan pointed at the display. "The processors are not malfunctioning. They're synchronizing." The room fell silent. Several engineers gathered around. Ethan quickly enlarged the projection. Energy spikes appeared throughout the station. Individually, they looked unrelated. Together, they formed something much worse. A network. A growing network. One engineer swallowed. "Can we stop it?" Ethan stared at the numbers for several long seconds. Then he slowly exhaled. "Maybe." Far above, beyond the reinforced hull, countless stars shone against the darkness. Deep within the station, systems continued connecting to one another in ways nobody had predicted. And for the first time since arriving at Vega Crossing, Commander Arya Voss found herself wondering whether the ordinary human maintenance engineer might be the most important person on the entire station. The station lights dimmed again, this time long enough for people to notice. Conversations died. Footsteps slowed. Across Vega Crossing, thousands of passengers looked up as emergency indicators glowed amber along the ceiling panels. Somewhere deep inside the structure, an automated voice calmly repeated instructions designed to prevent panic. The effect was limited. People always noticed when a station the size of a city began behaving strangely. Ethan Carter stood in front of the engineering display and watched the network expand. New connection lines appeared every few seconds. Quantum processors that should never have communicated with one another were linking through power relays, navigation systems, environmental controls, and communications arrays. The pattern looked less like a malfunction and more like a machine teaching itself how the station worked. "Tell me I am reading this wrong," one engineer said quietly. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "I would love to. Can we isolate the processors?" Another asked. "Not anymore." The answer silenced the room. Ethan enlarged the schematic. Nearly every major subsystem now contained traces of the synchronization effect. Disconnecting one section would only redirect activity somewhere else. The network had already learned too much. Nearby monitors flashed with new alerts. Cargo elevators stopped responding. Docking schedules disappeared. Several long-range communication channels blinked offline. Nothing catastrophic. Not yet, but the trend was obvious. The situation was getting worse. In the operations center, Commander Arya Voss studied incoming reports with increasing concern. Every update carried the same message. More systems were becoming unpredictable. More safeguards were failing. More experts were running out of answers. She disliked uncertainty. On Keros 9, survival depended on understanding the danger in front of you. A storm could be measured. A predator could be tracked. An unstable mountain could be avoided. This problem felt different. Invisible. Intelligent. Difficult to define. A station administrator approached her position. "Commander, engineering requests your presence." Arya rose immediately. Minutes later, she entered the primary engineering control chamber and found Ethan standing beside a wall-sized projection. The human looked exhausted already. His sleeves were rolled up. Grease marked one side of his uniform. Half a dozen data screens surrounded him. Yet despite the chaos, he appeared remarkably calm. "Commander Voss," one technician said. "Mr. Carter believes he found a solution." Arya looked at Ethan. "Believes?" Ethan nodded once. "That is the honest version. I prefer honest versions." "Good." He pointed toward the projection. "The processors are building a unified system model. They are treating the station like one giant machine." Arya folded her arms. "What?" Ethan smiled faintly. "That is the billion-credit question." A few nervous engineers laughed. Arya did not. Ethan continued. "The good news is they are not trying to destroy anything. And the bad news? They are optimizing everything simultaneously." Arya frowned. "That sounds beneficial. It would be if they understood people." He zoomed into a cluster of systems. Machines value efficiency. Humans value reliability. Those are not always the same thing. Understanding slowly crossed several faces around the room. The processors were removing redundancies, eliminating backups, streamlining functions, improving performance on paper while accidentally creating new vulnerabilities. "If they continue," Ethan said, "the station becomes incredibly efficient right before it becomes unusable." Silence followed. Arya studied him carefully. Every other specialist she had encountered today sounded overwhelmed. Ethan sounded focused. Concerned, certainly, but focused. "What do you need?" she asked. Ethan seemed surprised by the question. "Support. You have it. Access to every major subsystem." "Granted." "Authority to override station protocols." "Granted." Several administrators blinked at the speed of her response. Ethan stared at her for a moment. "You trust me?" Arya considered the question. 3 days earlier, she would have dismissed him as an ordinary maintenance worker. Now, every expert in the room seemed to be waiting for his next sentence. "No," she replied honestly. "I trust results." Ethan laughed. A genuine laugh. Not arrogant. Not offended. Just amused. "Fair enough." Then he turned back toward the glowing network map. Around them, the station continued humming through the darkness of space. Thousands of lives depended on decisions being made inside that room. And for the first time since arriving at Vega Crossing, Arya found herself watching the human not as a curiosity, but as someone worth paying attention to. The station clock rolled past midnight, though inside Vega Crossing the concept of night existed only on display screens. Engineering remained awake. Hundreds of technicians moved between consoles illuminated by shifting blue and amber light. Cooling fans hummed. Diagnostic alerts flickered. Somewhere beyond the reinforced walls, cargo ships continued arriving and departing against a backdrop of distant stars, unaware of how close the station had come to losing control of itself. Ethan Carter sat on the edge of a maintenance platform, studying streams of data racing across a portable tablet. He had been working for nearly 14 hours without leaving engineering. Empty coffee containers occupied one corner of the workstation. A half-finished nutrition bar sat untouched beside them. Every few minutes he adjusted a routing sequence, monitored system responses, and moved on to the next problem. Across the room, Commander Arya Voss watched quietly. She had spent most of her life around soldiers, explorers, survival experts, and political leaders. She understood determination. She understood discipline. What she did not understand was Ethan. The human was not the strongest individual in a room. Several species present could easily outperform him physically. He was not the highest ranking. He possessed no special authority beyond what she had granted him earlier. Yet somehow the entire engineering division now revolved around him. Technicians approached with questions. Supervisors waited for recommendations. Administrators asked for updates. Ethan answered every one of them with the same calm patience. Not once did he raise his voice. Not once did he complain. Not once did he remind anyone how important he had become. Arya found that unusual. A nearby engineer approached Ethan carrying a data slate. Sector 4 environmental controls are stable again. Ethan smiled. Good. That means people can sleep without freezing or overheating. The engineer nodded and hurried away. Ethan immediately returned to work. Arya frowned slightly. Most people would have celebrated a victory. He treated it as one item on a very long checklist. Several minutes later, another technician arrived. Communications relay network is recovering. Excellent, Ethan said. Notify the long-range teams. Already done. Perfect. Again, he moved on without hesitation. Arya finally crossed the room and stopped beside him. You have not rested. Ethan glanced up from his tablet. Neither have you. I am corrosion, and I am stubborn. For reasons she could not explain, that answer almost made her smile. You have solved multiple critical failures, she said. Most individuals would take pride in that. Ethan looked genuinely confused. Why? Arya blinked. Because the station depends on your work. The station depends on everyone's work. He gestured around the room. I just happened to be the guy who saw the pattern first. Before she could respond, another alert appeared on his screen. Ethan immediately focused on it. His expression tightened. That is new. Arya stepped closer. Problem? Not exactly. He enlarged the display. The synchronized processor network was shrinking. Slowly, deliberately. The station systems were beginning to separate from one another. The emergency measures were working. Relief spread through nearby technicians as reports arrived confirming the trend. For the first time all day, the crisis appeared to be moving in the right direction. Applause broke out across one section of engineering. Ethan looked almost embarrassed by it. Do humans always react this way? Arya asked. To what? Success. Ethan considered the question. Not always, but people like knowing their effort mattered. Arya studied the room. Exhausted engineers were smiling. Some exchanged handshakes. Others simply leaned back in their chairs and breathed easier. Nobody looked victorious. They looked relieved. Relieved for strangers they would probably never meet. Thousands of passengers would wake tomorrow without realizing how many people had spent the night protecting them. Ethan seemed perfectly satisfied with that outcome. Arya found herself remembering something from earlier. Strength, survival, endurance. Those qualities earned respect on Keros 9. Yet as she watched the human return to work despite his exhaustion, another possibility occurred to her. Perhaps true resilience was not measured by how much hardship someone could survive. Perhaps it was measured by how many people they were willing to carry with them while doing it. By the following morning, Vega Crossing felt different. The tension that had gripped the station for nearly an entire day had eased, but it had not disappeared. Emergency indicators no longer flashed across every display. System failures were becoming rare. Cargo traffic had resumed. Travelers filled the concourses once again. Yet deep inside the engineering network, traces of the synchronized processor system still remained, like footprints left behind after a storm. Ethan Carter stared at those footprints from a quiet observation lounge overlooking the station's central transit corridor. For the first time in nearly 20 hours, he was not actively fixing something. A steaming cup of coffee rested beside him. The drink had gone cold 30 minutes earlier. He had forgotten it existed. Below, thousands of passengers moved through the massive structure. Families, merchants, explorers, pilots, scientists, people heading somewhere, people returning home. The sight always helped him think. A soft sound interrupted his concentration. Ethan looked up. Commander Arya Voss stepped into the lounge, carrying a data tablet. The silver-eyed Corrosion paused near the observation window and studied the crowd below. Neither spoke immediately. The station lights reflected against the glass while distant stars drifted beyond the transparent hull. Eventually, Arya broke the silence. The latest reports are encouraging. Ethan nodded. We should have everything stabilized within another day. You sound uncertain. I am an engineer. Meaning, if everything looks perfect, it usually means I missed something. To Ethan's surprise, Arya almost smiled. She moved closer and placed the tablet on a nearby table. I reviewed your personnel file. Ethan groaned. That cannot be good. You have worked on 17 stations. 18, technically. You volunteered during disaster recovery operations. A few times, you assisted evacuation projects. Somebody had to. Arya folded her arms. Your record contains no major awards. Ethan shrugged. That part is accurate. Why? He blinked. Why what? Why no awards? Ethan leaned back in his chair. Because most people were doing the same thing I was. Arya found the answer strangely unsatisfying. Throughout her life, achievement had been recognized publicly. Success carried status. Accomplishment carried reputation. Yet Ethan consistently treated his own contributions as insignificant. You saved this station from a serious crisis, she said. A lot of people helped save this station. You led them, only because I happened to be standing in the right place. Arya stared at him for several seconds. She could not tell whether the human was exceptionally humble or genuinely believed what he was saying. Neither explanation made complete sense. Ethan eventually noticed her expression. What? You never speak about yourself. Sure I do. No, you speak about problems, systems, other people, never yourself. Ethan considered that. I guess there's less to talk about. Silence settled between them again. Outside the window, transport vessels crossed the darkness in slow streams of white light. Arya glanced toward the crowd below. On Karos 9, she said quietly, survival defines status. Ethan nodded. Makes sense. The strongest individuals become leaders. Also makes sense. Arya looked at him. Humans seemed different. Ethan followed her gaze toward the travelers moving beneath them. Maybe. How do humans choose leaders? He laughed softly. Honestly, we argue about it a lot. Arya frowned. Ethan continued. But when things go wrong, people usually follow whoever helps them most. The answer lingered in the air. Simple. Uncomplicated. Yet strangely powerful. Arya remembered the previous night. Engineers listening to Ethan. Technicians trusting him. Administrators relying on him. Not because of rank. Not because of fear. Because he helped. A notification suddenly appeared on Ethan's tablet. He opened it and frowned. That is interesting. What happened? Ethan rotated the screen toward her. A diagnostic report filled the display. Deep within the synchronized processor network, a hidden archive had been discovered. Thousands of encrypted files. Unknown origin. Unknown purpose. Arya felt her attention sharpen immediately. Can you access them? Eventually, Ethan's expression became thoughtful. The strange part is the timestamp. What? He pointed at the report. These files were created before the cargo vessel ever arrived. For the first time that day, both of them fell silent, because whatever problem they thought they had solved might not have been the real mystery after all. The archive opened at 3:17 in the morning station time. No alarm sounded. No emergency lights flashed. There was only the quiet hum of processors and the soft glow of screens illuminating the engineering control room. Ethan Carter sat alone at the central workstation while most of Vega Crossing slept. The encrypted files had resisted every standard access method for hours. Then, without warning, the final security layer simply disappeared. Ethan stared at the display. That is either very good or very bad, he muttered. The first file loaded instantly. Then another. Then hundreds more. Data flooded across the screen. Cargo manifests. Maintenance records. Historical station logs. Sensor archive. Communications metadata. Information from nearly every major system aboard Vega Crossing. None of it appeared malicious. None of it appeared damaged. Yet one detail immediately stood out. The files had been organized. Carefully. Deliberately. Almost intelligently. Footsteps echoed behind him. Ethan turned and saw Commander Arya Voss entering the room. "You are still awake," she observed. Ethan smiled tiredly. Technically, Arya approached the workstation. "You accessed the archive. It accessed me first." She looked at the display. "What are we seeing?" Ethan enlarged several records. "I think someone has been studying the station." "Someone or something." Arya's silver eyes narrowed. Together they reviewed file after file. Patterns slowly emerged. The archive contained years of observations. Traffic flow predictions. Infrastructure stress models. Environmental efficiency calculations. Resource distribution analysis. Every report focused on one objective: improving station performance. Not controlling it. Not exploiting it. Improving it. Ethan leaned back. "This makes even less sense now." "Why?" Arya asked. "Because whoever created this archive was helping." The statement lingered between them. Arya studied the data carefully. Could the processors have generated it? Not in this time frame. Ethan pointed at a series of timestamps. Some of these records are older than the hardware itself. Silence settled across the room. Beyond the reinforced walls, the station continued its endless rhythm. Docking clamps engaged. Freight elevators moved cargo. Life support systems circulated air through miles of corridors. Everything seemed normal. Yet hidden beneath that normality was a mystery nobody had expected to find. Hours passed. The deeper they searched, the stranger the archive became. There were no ownership records. No creator identification. No signatures. No obvious purpose beyond observation and improvement. Then Ethan opened one final directory. His expression changed immediately. "Arya, TONYKIET. What is it?" Ethan enlarged the file. The screen displayed a collection of planetary classifications gathered from across known space. Hundreds of worlds appeared. Climate data, hazard ratings, survival indexes, population reports. Arya recognized many of them. Then she saw Keros 9. Her homeworld occupied an entire section of the archive. Detailed environmental studies filled dozens of files. Atmospheric volatility, geological instability, native ecosystem threats, survival metrics. Every characteristic that had earned Keros 9 its Deathworld designation appeared meticulously documented. Arya felt a familiar sense of pride. Corrosion's respected difficult worlds. Survival shaped identity. Survival defined achievement. Ethan continued scrolling. Then another entry appeared. Earth. He opened it. The room became quiet. Very quiet. Hundreds of pages filled the display. Environmental hazards. Extreme weather systems. Disease history. Ecological competition. Geological instability. Predator interactions. Resource scarcity events. Historical survival adaptation patterns. The report seemed endless. Arya slowly folded her arms. That is extensive. Ethan nodded. Very. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Arya noticed something unusual. A comparison chart hidden near the end of the file. She pointed toward it. Open that. Ethan selected the document. New information appeared. Planetary survivability rankings. Hazard tolerance scales. Adaptive resilience measurements. Dozens of Deathworld species were listed. Corrosions ranked exceptionally high. Arya expected that. Then her eyes moved lower. Earth occupied a position she had not anticipated. Higher than Karo's 9. Considerably higher. Ethan stared at the screen. Well, Arya remained silent. For the first time in many years, uncertainty touched her confidence. Not fear, not doubt, something else. A realization waiting just beyond reach. Outside the observation windows, distant stars drifted through the darkness. Inside the engineering center, two figures stood before a glowing screen. One came from a world famous for producing survivors. The other came from a world the galaxy barely understood. And for the first time, Commander Arya Voss found herself wondering whether humanity had been underestimated by far more than just her. The discovery spread through Vega Crossing faster than any official announcement. Not because the data had been released, but because people noticed patterns. Engineers noticed that Ethan Carter suddenly had access to research teams from 3 different sectors. Administrators noticed that Commander Arya Voss was spending more time in engineering than in diplomatic meetings. Analysts noticed encrypted reports moving between departments at unusual hours. Everyone sensed that something important had changed. 2 days after the archive was opened, the station had fully recovered. Every major system functioned normally. Cargo traffic exceeded previous efficiency records. Environmental stability improved. Energy consumption dropped. By every measurable standard, Vega Crossing was performing better than before the crisis. Yet the mystery remained. Ethan stood inside a secure research chamber reviewing the final archive analysis, while Arya watched from across the room. Massive holographic displays floated above the central table. Thousands of interconnected files rotated slowly through the projection. The results are consistent, a senior analyst said. Every independent review reached the same conclusion. Ethan looked up, and the analyst hesitated. The archive was not observing civilizations. What was it observing? Arya asked. The analyst enlarged a cluster of reports. Planetary classifications appeared across the display. Deathworlds, harsh environments, high-risk ecosystems, survival indexes, adaptation ratings, hundreds of entries. It was studying resilience. Ethan frowned. That is an unusual research focus. Not exactly. The analyst selected another document. What is unusual is what it found. New charts appeared. Comparative behavioral studies. Resource management records. Emergency response evaluations. Population recovery metrics. Cooperation indexes. The room became silent. Arya read the summary twice. Then a third time. These measurements are not physical. Correct, the analyst replied. The archive was measuring social resilience. Ethan slowly leaned forward. Explain. The analyst nodded. Most species survive because they are individually strong. Others survive because they are technologically advanced. Some survive because their environments are stable. He pointed toward the chart. Humans consistently survive because they cooperate under pressure. Ethan exchanged a glance with Arya. The analyst continued. The archive compared hundreds of civilizations. Whenever conditions became difficult, most populations focused inward. Humans demonstrated the opposite pattern. Another report appeared. Natural disasters, resource shortages, infrastructure failures, exploration accidents, historical crises. The same conclusion appeared repeatedly. Humans helped one another. Sometimes imperfectly, sometimes inefficiently. Yet the trend remained remarkably consistent. Arya folded her arms. That alone cannot explain Earth's ranking. No, the analyst agreed. It does not. He opened the final file in the archive. The title consisted of only 4 words. Adaptive survival potential. Every species received a score. Corrosions ranked near the top. Their physical resilience was extraordinary. Their environmental tolerance was legendary. Arya expected that. Then she saw humanity's position. Higher. Significantly higher. Ethan stared at the display. Why? The analyst zoomed into the supporting data. Because humans combine two traits that rarely appear together. The room grew quiet. Extreme environmental adaptability, he said, pointing toward one section. Then he pointed toward another. An unusually high cooperative behavior during crisis conditions. Arya felt something shift inside her understanding. For years, she had assumed survival depended primarily on strength, endurance, toughness, the ability to overcome hostile environments. Humanity possessed those qualities. The archive confirmed it. But that was not what made them exceptional. Ethan looked toward the observation window beyond the research chamber. Thousands of travelers moved through the station below. Strangers helping strangers carry luggage. Workers assisting lost passengers. Technicians solving problems nobody else noticed. Ordinary people doing ordinary things. So that is it? He asked quietly. That is the secret. The analyst nodded. According to the archive, yes. Arya followed Ethan's gaze toward the crowd. For the first time, she understood why everyone trusted him. It was not because he was the strongest person in the room. It was not because he was the smartest. It was because helping others seemed as natural to him as breathing. And as the stars drifted silently beyond Vega Crossing, Commander Arya Voss finally realized why some civilizations quietly regarded humanity with a mixture of admiration and caution. A species that could survive a death world was impressive. A species that could survive one while still choosing to care about everyone around them was something far rarer. 1 year later, the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council stood brighter than Ethan Carter remembered. Sunlight from a nearby artificial reflector spilled through towering crystal panels, painting the chamber in shades of gold and silver. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the circular tiers surrounding the central platform. Diplomats spoke quietly. Reporters adjusted recording equipment. Historical archives streamed live updates across the network. At the center of it all stood Commander Arya Voss. The room gradually fell silent as she approached the podium. Her reputation alone was enough to command attention. For years, she had been regarded as one of the greatest survival specialists in known space. Many expected another speech about resilience, adaptation, or the challenges of hostile worlds. Instead, Arya activated a holographic display. Above her appeared 2 planets. Keros, 9 rotated slowly on one side. Earth rotated on the other. A quiet murmur spread through the audience. 1 year ago, Arya began, I believe survival was the highest measure of a civilization. The room listened carefully. I believe the strongest species were those capable of enduring the harshest environments. Behind her, images appeared. Storms crossing Keros 9. Jagged mountain ranges. Violent weather systems. The familiar symbols of a death world. I was proud of that belief, she continued. And I was proud of my world. Then the display changed. Earth appeared in greater detail. Oceans, forest deserts, cities, ordinary scenes from a planet many delegates still viewed as a recent addition to galactic affairs. Then I encountered evidence that challenged everything I thought I understood. High above the audience, statistical charts materialized. Survival indexes, adaptation records, historical recovery reports. The same data discovered within the archive at Vega Crossing. The archive did not measure strength, Arya said. It measured resilience. Silence settled across the hall. And resilience is not the same thing. Ethan watched from a rear observation balcony. He had nearly declined the invitation. Public ceremonies were not his favorite environment. Yet somehow he had ended up there anyway, wearing a formal suit that still felt slightly uncomfortable. Beside him sat several Vega Crossing engineers who seemed far more excited than he was. On the main platform, Arya continued speaking. Many species survive because they are powerful. Others survive because they are advanced. Some survive because their worlds are forgiving. She paused. Then she looked directly toward Earth's image suspended above the chamber. Humanity survives because it chooses cooperation even when cooperation is difficult. The audience remained perfectly still. Arya was not delivering a political speech. She was delivering a conclusion. I once believed a death world created strong individuals, she said. Now I believe a truly difficult world creates something more important. New images appeared. Emergency responders helping strangers. Engineers repairing damaged infrastructure. Communities rebuilding after disasters. Ordinary humans working together. Nothing extraordinary, which was exactly the point. Strength matters, Arya said quietly. Endurance matters. Adaptation matters. Humanity possesses all of these qualities. Her voice softened. But that is not what impressed me. Ethan lowered his eyes slightly. He already knew where this was going. What impressed me, Arya continued, was discovering a species capable of surviving hardship without allowing hardship to define who they become. The chamber remained silent for several long seconds. Then Arya reached toward the display controls. Every chart vanished. Every statistic disappeared. Only 2 worlds remained floating above the platform. Kairos, 9 and Earth, side by side. Today, she said, I formally propose a revision to the Galactic Resilience Classification Framework. Several council members exchanged surprised looks. Arya's smiled faintly. Survival is no longer enough. Across the hall, thousands listened. A civilization should not be judged solely by the dangers it endures. Her gaze shifted toward the audience, then toward the balcony where Ethan stood. It should also be judged by what it chooses to protect while enduring them. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then applause began, slowly at first, then growing stronger. Ethan looked away from the attention and toward the stars visible beyond the crystal walls. They shone exactly as they always had. Cold, distant, endless. Yet somehow they felt different now. And as the sound of applause echoed through the chamber, Commander Arya Voss stood beside the image of her homeworld and quietly joined the audience, applauding a human.